Namaskar. Today we have a special occasion, actually. On July 4th is the official birthday of Ananda. And this past July 4th, just a couple days ago, was the 45th anniversary of the creation of the Ananda spiritual community. It's a little echoey. Maybe you can lower it slightly. So, if you haven't seen the webpage, I have been updating it, and there is a link to a message from Ananda Worldwide Spiritual Director Nayaswami Jyotish Devi. So please, if you have a chance, do check that out. And of course, when there's an anniversary and a birthday, you reflect on what that means, what shared experiences that you have, and exactly what it is that you're celebrating. And of course, with Ananda, there's so many facets to the manifestation of spiritual community as Ananda has grown through the years. But there's one particular aspect of it that I want to talk about today. And it is rooted in a conversation that a few of us had yesterday in Greater Noida at the meditation group there. It has to do with, somehow the subject of dreams came up. And somebody asked me if I'd ever dreamed about Swamiji, and I said yes. And then I said that one of the common traits of these dreams that I've had every once in a while over the years is that at some point, almost invariably, Swamiji will laugh. And to me, I would say that if I were to create a picture that communicated the feeling of Ananda's history to me, it would be a picture of Swamiji laughing. And so this is a little bit about what I'd like to talk about today. And in order to do that, I'd like to actually read a poem by a master from Whispers from Eternity. It's called The Fountain of Smiles. Behold not those sarcastic smiles, which are conceived in the dark womb of hate. Welcome not those bandit smiles, which rob people of sincerity. Wear not the serpent smiles, which hide their venom behind strings of laughter. Banish the volcanic smiles of subterranean wrath. Bedim not that mirror of thy soul, thy face, with shades of pitying smiles. Let no witless, noisy, muscle-contorting laughter, like a boisterous ruffian, echo the emptiness of thy soul. Let fountains of joy gush out from the soil of thy mind. Spread fine sprays of sensitive smiles in all directions, and send out their vitality to all laugh-thirsty hearts. Let the lake of thy smiles break its embankment and flow outward to infinity. Let smiles float out gaily from thy heart to the lonely stars, brightening their twinkles with divine laughter. Inundate the drought of dry, over-rational minds, sweeping away the barriers of cold formality. Spread thy smiles with the dawn to banish all gloom from other minds. Send shafts of thy golden smiles like sunlight, through every dark cloud of despondency, to brighten others' days of depression and gloom. Command thy smiles to resurrect life in the semi-conscious walking dead. Smile for those living dead also, whose grim peace betokens at least victory over pain. Let thy smiles pulverize to atoms the rocks of all sorrow. Let thy smiles meander like through desert minds and oasis hearts. Let thy deluge of smiles fearlessly sweep through all minds, through all dark, lonely alleys, drowning or washing away every barrier of human pain. When God laughs through the soul, and the soul smiles through the heart, and the heart smiles through the eyes, then the Prince of Smiles is crowned. 'Neath the canopy of thy celestial brow, protect thy Prince of Smiles in the castle of sincerity. Let no rebel hypocrisy lurk in dark woods, waiting to destroy it. Spread the gospel of smiles, to purify all homes with health-giving laughter. Loose wildfires of smiles, to blaze through the thickets of melancholia. Open the long-bottled musk of smiles, and scatter its perfume to all men. Intoxicate all with the wine of thy smiles. Take rich smiles from every joyous soul. Excavate smiles from the mine of all true mirth. North, south, east, and west, wherever thou goest, O smile millionaire, scatter thy golden smiles freely, freely, everywhere. The very name Ananda, bliss, God's bliss. This is the essential truth of Ananda's history, both outwardly and inwardly. And of course, it starts with our connection to Spirit. Spirit is Satchidananda, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. So, at the core of the spiritual life is our personal experience of that bliss. And of course, most people would not be drawn to the spiritual life if they were experiencing that bliss all the time. Yes, in every smile there is a small reflection of that. But the reality is that most people are very unhappy. Or they would describe their happiness as a momentary experience of entertainment. Like in the poem, the contorting laughter, ha 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 ha, let's go out and have a good time, let's party. And most people think that is happiness, but that is not happiness. That is really a reflection of the soldier trying to, at the gate, trying to keep the hordes of unhappiness away. And so they clank their armor, and they roar their determination to keep unhappiness away. They don't realize that happiness has already taken a home inside. But because it's been locked into the secret back room, which people have forgotten where the key is, then they think it's not there. They don't realize it's there. So when I came to Ananda, of course, I was just like everybody else. I sought happiness outside and was quite commonly unhappy inside. But through my good fortune, I came into contact with the autobiography, and after some time, I arrived at Ananda. And when I arrived at Ananda, of course, I had read in the autobiography about the bliss of God contact. And that if you live in that joy, all of your life can express that joy. But I'd never met anybody who was expressing that. And so when I came to Ananda, it was fascinating to me to find a group of people that were incredibly poor financially. I mean, almost everybody at Ananda lived underneath what is considered to be the poverty line in America. And everybody woke up every day and had to figure out what to do. When you decide to disengage from society's norms, then what are you going to do? You know, I mean, you have to figure, okay, if I'm not going to do what isn't working, what can I do that is working? You have to take on a new lifestyle. You have to take on a new way of approaching living on planet Earth. And so in those early years of Ananda, Ananda was a place where everybody had basically left society. And what was left was a group of very sincere young yogis, led by, of course, thank God, a great yogi, Swami Kriyanandaji. And so when I came to Ananda, what I found, it was like I had been transported into the past, the ancient past of India. And I came upon basically a long-haired sage sitting under a tree and a small group of disciples sitting at his feet. And they were drinking the wisdom of the ages. And this environment created in each and every one of us a glimpse of Ananda, a glimpse of the ability to perceive God's presence right here, right now. A little bit, and then more. Yoganandaji used to say, you should bite off a piece of life that's too big to chew and chew it. And we had chosen to bite off the bliss. You can't fully absorb infinite bliss until you can commune with it. But you start chewing on it. And the way that we would chew on it is that we would bring it with us all the time. If you've ever seen, people who have negative habits, like smoking. Okay, so people who smoke cigarettes, they're always, it's like they're actually doing something. Oh, I'm smoking a cigarette. I'm busy. What a complete waste of time. I'm standing here poisoning myself. Yes, and I feel important to do it. There's always this sense of, this ego sense of, this is very pleasurable, I'm poisoning myself. And when you're a young child, or young, if the first time you ever tried smoking, it's like, your body completely rejects it immediately. And as Swamiji said when he first smoked as a young man, he said, I'm determined to do this. I'm going to conquer this smoking. In spite of how terrible my body knows that it is. And of course, eventually, he did get rid of the habit. But it's a habit. It's a negative habit. And we live in many negative habits that keep us from the idea of having positive habits. And the key in the spiritual life is to exchange the negative habits for positive habits. So at Ananda's, and initially, we all experienced Ananda as a place. And most importantly, Ananda was a place where you sat at Swamiji's feet and listened to him talk about God and Guru. And Ananda was a place where you came to the temple on Sunday and chant and meditate and listen to him speak about the spiritual life. And then you'd come to the temple again for Kriya initiation. And you'd be touched by the blessings of the Kriya ceremony. And that would be the God presence. And then at Christmas time, we would come into the temple for the 8-hour meditation. And that was one of the sweetest days of the year. And then on Christmas Day, we would come and we would listen to the Messiah and the music, and we would exchange gifts. And then we'd have a meal together, and Swamiji would talk about God and Guru. And on Easter, we would go into the temple and talk about God. And then we would have special occasions, all different kinds. One year we had Halloween. We had a costume competition. And one of the funny things is, it was very hard to get to know Swamiji. He was such a yogi. He would rarely talk about himself unless it had something to do with a spiritual lesson for us. And so I was entertained to try to observe him and try to understand him, more than he would actually necessarily want to share. So one year we had this Halloween party, and people dressed up as angels and witches and a wide variety of things. And one of the members, a fellow named Shiva, he came as a greaser. Now, I don't know if you know what a greaser is, but a greaser is from the 50s in America. A greaser was like a guy who was into cars. And so he would wear blue jeans and a white t-shirt, and then he would roll up the t-shirt arm, and in the roll-up he would keep a little of his cigarettes. Okay? And the hair would be slicked back, like with a little grease, And it was a very particular look. And so what was very funny was that Shiva came in and went up onto the stage, and he just walked up, and we all got it. We all understood exactly what he was, and everybody started to cheer. It was like, the greatest costume in the world. Everybody loved it. But I turned to look at Swamiji, and he had a look of complete... He could not figure out why we were all so excited. He was looking at it, he's going, He didn't understand what a greaser was. He had been living in the ashram. He was totally disconnected in the 50s from everyday American life. He didn't get it. He didn't know what it was. He had withdrawn from that part of society. He had taken the habit of living out there and said, I'm going to commit myself to living in here. Well, of course, we told him what it was, and then he laughed. But it was one of those moments in which we realized something about Swamiji that we didn't know before. Swamiji had completely withdrawn from everyday life. Why? To experience God's presence. And he had committed himself to that to such a degree that, in America we say you have to get along with keep up with the Joneses. Your neighbors. You have to do what they do. You have to have a new car. You have to have, today you have to have the latest smartphone. You have to keep up with the latest styles. But you don't have to. When you live for the latest styles, you give up joy. When you live for God, you give up unhappiness. Remember at the very end of the Finding Happiness movie, Swamiji says, when asked, what message would you give? One of the things he says is, don't live for unhappiness, live for happiness. It's so simple. It makes so much sense. And yet, we've been driven through so many years to live for unhappiness. The very things that we know won't bring us happiness, we continue to do them over and over again. So, the Ananda history is a history of changing the way that we relate to every normal life experience. Like, I've been a vegetarian since I was 16. Well, what does that mean? A lot of time people get into vegetarianism and it's like, this special mix of vegetable juices and this thing, and there's a long explanation about what does that mean. For me, it means something very simple. I just don't eat that other stuff. Nothing with a face. If it's got a face, I'm not going to eat it. Okay? There's a few other things like mussels, a shellfish. They don't generally have faces. I wouldn't eat them either. But then forget about it. So I said, well, how do you live? Well, I live pretty well. I'm not hurting for bulk, okay? I just don't eat those things anymore. Why? Because I'm trying to do things that help me to be happy. I'm trying to do things that lead me in that direction of seeing the Ananda under every life experience. So when you go to work, you do the same thing. When you have a family, you do the same thing. At Ananda, our history is doing, everybody thinks, oh, those crazy yogis up there. What must they be doing in secret? There must be doing something strange. Well, there is something that we do that is strange for some people. One time, 3 of us monks were sent up to Oregon to help somebody begin their own community, and they wanted to do a construction project. So we were sent up to help them, and we stayed in this little cabin in the forest. We had to, and the road was, we didn't have a car, and the road was so bad that most cars couldn't go on it anyway. So we were just dropped off, and we didn't really accomplish very much, but we had this great kind of seclusion in the cabin. And so we would meditate every day together. And one day we had a visitor from this group. I mean, I never actually saw a group, but we were there to help the group, even though I never saw the group. So this fellow came and to stay with us for a day. And so he came and we decided, well, this is a good opportunity to have a 3-hour meditation. So we went into the little closet. We just barely squeezed in, and we began to meditate. And after about, 20 or 30 minutes, this fellow got up and went outside. And we figured, well, he's just, restless. He's not used to meditation. And so he'll walk around, and when we're done, we'll talk to him. Well, when we got up from our meditation, we went to look for him. He was gone. And he said, we later found out he literally walked 10 miles back home. Well, why did you do that? And he said, well, you guys were just sitting in there and it was dark and it was just crazy. I had to get out. He just thought we were crazy. We were crazy for joy. We were crazy for trying to experience Ananda. And Ananda's history is about trying to experience Ananda in all life experiences. So we build homes like everybody else. We decorate them. But we often put in a little closet to sit in. But we call it a meditation room. But it's normal. It's just like everybody else. When we get in the car and drive to the shop, we have the same challenges as everybody else when cars cut in front of us, and we would prefer they didn't. We used to go to the movies. The Master took the disciples to the movies occasionally. He took them to concerts. Not all the time. But he just made this point that our lives, to live in the bliss and the joy of God, doesn't mean that you have to turn off the creation. It means that you have to learn to live within, and then in that interconnection, interact with creation in positive ways. When we were with Swamiji, I can never remember a time that any conversation, it would be very unusual for a conversation not to turn towards the spiritual life and to end or at least participate at some point in laughter. And the thing about laughing, when you observe a person over an extended period of time, you can get to know how they laugh, why they laugh, and the spirit with which they laugh. And over time we began to realize that Swamiji's nature was never to laugh at anything, but to laugh with it. And one of the ways we learned to understand that was his love for P.G. Wodehouse. And P.G. Wodehouse was a British humorist, and he wrote about Bertie Wooster and the Butler Jeeves and the society in which they lived, in British society. And of course, Swamiji had lived for some years. He went to school in England, so he was very familiar with that society. And at one point, Swamiji said that he was saying this humorously, but there was meaningfulness in it. He said he didn't think that a person could be a member of Ananda if they didn't enjoy P.G. Wodehouse. And I thought, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? And I realized that there was something that P.G. Wodehouse did, that he was able to laugh at all of the idiosyncrasies of people in general, but he never laughed at them, but he always laughed with them. He was never hurtful. So much humor is hurtful to others. People laugh at others. This is the most common way in which people laugh, because they're laughing with ego consciousness. And so many times people do evil deeds and then they laugh. Ha ha ha, I did that. Ha ha, you got stabbed. And whether it was verbally or physically. That's very common. But that's not soul laughter, that's ego laughter. That leads to suffering in the future. But Swamiji always laughed. The thing is that we usually talk about the anatomy of yoga and the chakras and the flow of energy in relationship to self-realization. And we get into it for the practice of Kriya Yoga, and to understand the mechanism that takes place in order to liberate the soul from the limitations of the ego. But one of the greatest ways to understand that is to try to feel the laughter of another person. Where are they laughing from? Where is that energy coming from? What qualities of laughter is being expressed? And in Swamiji, let me step back one step. Swamiji often talked about, or he wrote in The Path, about watching Master laugh. And he said he sometimes Master would literally have them rolling in the aisles. And yet he said he would look into Master's eyes, and there was a certain distance. You could see that his soul was untouched, even though he was sincerely participating. And this is one of the keys. We need to learn to be so connected inside that we're a little bit distant. And yet we have to manifest that distance with genuine sincerity. And that is the key to finding balance in yourself. If you only go into that distance, then without this outward expression, then you run the risk of ego, of a spiritual ego, pride, but also to not be in balance. Most people cannot maintain that, for example, keeping silence for 25 or 30 years. Most people can't do that. Some people have trouble keeping silence for 5 minutes. So they're not very likely going to be in that interiorized space. As time goes by, as we deepen our meditations, we can experience that more fully, and then we can come from that state, that interiorized state, and feel, the Master described it as the contradictory distance of omnipresence. In other words, if you're everywhere, you should be, you're fully present. But to be fully present, you have to be a little bit distant. You can't be caught up in the limitations. So Christ consciousness is the consciousness, the divine consciousness, that is present in every molecule of the creation, but it's untouched by it. And that we want to live in that untouched state. And yet, as long as we're required to interact with the creation, we want to be connected to the Christ presence, and then to manifest it in the most positive way under all circumstances. Swamiji, when he would laugh, you'd see how he was laughing with his heart. He wasn't laughing with his head. And he was incredibly intelligent and capable mentally. But when he first came to the spiritual life, he was too intellectual. And he tried to develop devotion. And eventually, the devotion took over. And he began to live in that devotion. And that the center of the devotion is in the heart. And our point of intuitive perception of God's presence is in the heart. It's connected to here. We often say, well, the heart is love and the spiritual eye is joy. But in essence, they're one. God is one. So you can experience them individually, but you can also ultimately experience them as one. That God is, we say God, the 8 attributes. So God is those 8 attributes, but God is all of those at once. So you can be wise and loving. You can experience the light and joy. You can experience the light and the joy and the power and the sound. All of these things can be experienced simultaneously or individually. When Swamiji would laugh, if you could reach out and be in that laughter and feel the spirit that he shared in that moment, you could learn to commune with it. And this is one of the ways that he taught us, was to commune with, and this is why we attune to the masters. When we look into their pictures and we inwardly reach out and feel their presence, this is how we want to, this is really the essence of satsang. The truth, to be with the truth. The truth is that inner presence, that magnetic reality. And what we want to do when we laugh is to laugh in that peace, in that bliss, with a little bit of detachment. So you feel God's bliss, a little bit of it, more and more over the years, but then you let it express out into life. This is why a woman once said that Kriyanandaji was the kindest man that she ever met. That laughter, that bliss, all this kindness, they were one. His laughter was always kind. I never heard him laugh in a way that was demeaning to another person, or that had an edge to it. You know, that little edge that people get when they're trying to, in the most polite way, poke at somebody. I never saw that from him. And I found that in every experience that we had, Ananda was not on the outside, this history is not a ride of only good times. We had a lot of tough times, a lot of challenging days, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And yet underneath all of that, if you were to ask, I think you could ask any old-timer at Ananda and say, what do you remember about Ananda? They would just smile. You just remember only good things. Only good things. Because every life challenge in the end led to this inner well-being. This is what we celebrate. If Ananda was just a place that had been outwardly successful and had built the resort, the Ananda resort, and people lived the country lifestyle, it wouldn't be Ananda. It would be something completely different. But with God, it is truly Ananda. And this is something that it took us time to mature into. We had to learn how to live in Ananda, not just at Ananda, but in Ananda. And once we learned to live in Ananda, then we realized that the whole world is Ananda. That when you live in that joy, when you live in that smile, then all of the world is that smile. And that is the key to, and the only real value of Ananda's success. If we could say that we gave somebody a comfortable lifetime, we would have nothing. But if we were able to help them to experience this joy, to contact that God presence in their own being, and that had a system-wide, systemic effect on the totality of their life, now we're talking about something very worthwhile. And this has been Ananda's journey. And the masters, the light that's come through the masters into this tradition is all about carrying this joy, this bliss, into every life experience. And Swamiji's example of that, when you watch his videos, and do watch his videos, you'll feel it. And then when he laughs, try to reach out and feel the laugh. Feel that inward bliss, not just the outward sounds, but that inward feeling. When we do that, we begin to learn to commune with the Spirit underneath all life circumstances. So when we wonder, well, what should I do in this situation? What should I do in that situation? We should learn to reach out and feel the God presence underneath every life experience. When we do that, then we will live more and more in the very thing that we celebrate in the life of Ananda as a group of people and as an expression of the divine. So this is what we're here for. We're here for bliss. We're here for God's joy, and we're here to share it with others. I'd like to conclude by reading again the early lessons, the early SRF lessons. At one state there was a group called the Super Advanced Course. And this is a small section called Joy as a Cure for Worry. And lesson 1 is the Divine Magnetic Diet. And he talks about a number of things, but he says, the negative method for overcoming worry, or worry poisoning, is worry fasting. In other words, you fast from worrying. You consciously don't worry. And you do it consciously. Well, today I'm not going to eat sugar. Today I'm not going to worry. So you don't live on the diet of worry. You die. You get away from it. But here he says there are also positive methods. One infected with the germ of worry must go on a strict mental diet. He must feast frugally but regularly on the society of joyful minds. Every day he must associate, if only for a little while, with joy-infected minds. There are some people, the song of whose laughter nothing can still. Seek them out and feast with them on this most vitalizing food of joy. Continue the laughter diet for a month or two. Feast on laughter in the company of really joyful people. Digest it thoroughly by wholeheartedly masticating laughter with the teeth of your attention. Steadfastly continue your laughter diet once you have begun it. And at the end of a month or so, or two, you will see the change. Your mind will be filled with sunshine. So, the Ananda way of life is about taking on a joy diet. In all circumstances, see joy, seek the joy underneath it, live in that joy. And the result of that is that we as a group and as individuals will be happy. And that through God's grace, we will have opportunities to share that joy with many other people. Namaskar.